Valid, void, voidable. 3 words with potentially massive consequences. One means enforceable. One means it never existed. And one means someone can walk away and leave you holding the paperwork. If you want to pass the real estate exam and protect your clients in real life, you need to know the difference cold. So let's clear it up. As we start to think about a valid contract, remember, a valid contract must have competent parties. That means sane, sober, and over 18. A valid contract also requires mutual assent. That's that meeting of the minds for all the material terms of the agreement. A valid contract also must be for a lawful purpose, and it must have consideration. Something of value has to change hands. So the valid contract must have all of these things to be enforceable. That's the best type of valid contract, would be an enforceable valid contract. But a voidable contract is also a valid contract. Someone has the right to terminate it for some reason or not. But if they choose to perform and they choose to go forward, it's still a valid agreement. An agreement can be valid and voidable at the same time. And a voidable contract, good examples would include a contract with a minor, or a contract with someone who was impaired when they signed the agreement, someone who was under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Those would be voidable contracts. And as long as the minor or the intoxicated person wants to perform and they go forward with it, it's valid. But it's voidable, and they have a right to terminate it if they choose. And don't confuse a voidable contract with a contract that's unenforceable. A contract that's unenforceable has no legal force on either side. A good example of an unenforceable contract is a contract to purchase a piece of real estate. And if you have an oral contract to purchase a piece of real estate, that contract is unenforceable because of the statute of frauds. The statute of frauds says all real estate contracts that transfer an interest in the title to the real property must be in writing to be enforceable. So an oral offer to purchase real estate is a valid contract, and if both parties perform, the seller transfers title and the buyer pays for the property, that's a valid transaction, and it happens more often than you would think. Understand that when you have an oral offer to purchase like that, neither party is obligated to perform. And if one party backs out, the other party has no legal grounds to sue because the agreement is unenforceable because you didn't put it in writing. So we have valid contracts, and valid contracts could be enforceable, they could be voidable, and it could be unenforceable if it's not in writing. Now, what confuses a lot of people is people will think, well, if it doesn't have all of the essential elements, for example, if you do a contract with a minor, you don't have someone who is competent, therefore that makes it void. And that is incorrect. Remember, that contract with a minor is not void, it is voidable by the minor. That minor could force the other side to perform. The minor is the one who potentially could be injured, and because they don't have legal capacity, they have the right to say, I changed my mind, I want out. So a contract with a minor is missing an element, but it is not void. It is voidable. Let's focus on a void contract for a minute, because a void contract is no contract. It was never a contract. It wasn't valid for a minute. There are only two examples of void contracts. One is a contract with someone who has been adjudicated incompetent. This is someone who has been taken to court and the judge has determined that they have no legal capacity, that they don't have the ability to make their own decisions. A good example of this that was very public many years ago was Britney Spears. Britney Spears was a childhood talent. She was famous, probably made a lot of money as a young child on the Mickey Mouse Club. She grew up and became a pop star in her teenage and early adult years. And poor Britney kind of went off the rails a little bit. And her father stepped up, sued her, and the judge declared her incompetent. And there were many years, probably, I don't remember exactly how long, 10 or 15 years, that Britney Spears had no legal authority to make her own decisions. Her dad made every decision. And at some point, Britney grew up and determined that she wanted her rights back. And bless her heart, she took her dad to court, and the judge agreed with her that she had now reached an age and a place in her life that she could make her own decisions. I think that's very rare. Usually, when somebody's declared incompetent, they don't get it back. But her situation was unique. The point is, if you've been declared incompetent in a court of law, you have no legal capacity, and any contract you enter is void. It is no contract. If you want to make a contract with someone who's been adjudicated incompetent, you have to go to their guardian. In Britney's case, it would have been her dad. Britney still had contracts. She still made money. It all went through her dad because he was her legal guardian. So that's one example of a void contract. Another example of a void contract is a contract for an illegal purpose. So if you enter into a contract for an illegal purpose, for example, I want to sell a piece of property to you, and I'm telling you, I'm going to sell this property to you, but I don't own the property. I have no legal rights to the property. I sign a name that looks like the name that's on the deed, and that transaction goes through. That is still a contract with an illegal purpose. I have no legal capacity. I have no legal right to that property. And going forward, that's going to be a problem. That transfer will ultimately, hopefully, be rescinded after the owner, the real owner, lives through a nightmare, I'm sure. The point is, I committed a crime when I fraudulently forged someone else's name on that document. And that would have been a void contract. Once more, it doesn't mean it doesn't move forward. It just means it shouldn't have. And so, as we begin to think about valid, void, voidable, and then unenforceable contracts, remember the best answer oftentimes, if you're guessing, you're in there and you're going, oh my goodness, I don't know, I would guess voidable, because more often than not, there's a reason for somebody to terminate, to get out, potentially. An enforceable contract is a contract with somebody who is sane, sober, 18 or older. They understand what they're doing. It's for a lawful purpose, and something of value is changing hands. That's a valid enforceable contract. A voidable contract, an example, is a contract with a minor or someone who's impaired. They're not sane, sober, and 18 or older. And remember, if it's a contract to purchase a piece of real estate, in addition to having all of those essential elements, it also must be in writing, says the statute of frauds. So if it's oral, it may still be valid and performance could occur, but it's unenforceable if someone wants out. And don't forget that there are only 2 examples of a void contract. And one is a contract with somebody who's been adjudicated incompetent, and the second one is a contract for an illegal purpose. You need to understand this and be prepared to answer questions. And remember, the best guess most of the time, if you're unsure, don't guess void. I would guess voidable. That would be your best guess most of the time. And hopefully you're not guessing. And I'm Kim. I like to keep it simple. I want you to pass that test.